I woke with his scent on my skin, and an emptiness where he should have been. The first thing I saw was the dent his head had left in the pillow. A perfect crescent, like the moon had pressed its thumb into cotton, and then vanished. The lamplight we forgot to turn off had burned itself out to a soft ember glow, and the apartment felt too quiet, the kind that hums in your ears and tastes like panic. My throat stung when I swallowed. Not the scratch of a winter cold, a sharper, focused ache, like teeth had made a promise my brain hadn't signed. I didn't touch it. Not yet. If I touched it, it would be real. And everything that had seemed safe last night would split open. So I lay there and breathed through my mouth like a beginner swimmer, counting the beats of my heart until they stopped tripping over themselves. His scent was everywhere. Cedar and something colder, rain on hot pavement, the kind of smell you don't buy, you earn by being you. It sat in the knit throw on my shoulders and the flannel pillowcase, in the couch cushions that had been my nest for hours. It was in my hair. Riley? My voice came out hoarse, betraying a night I couldn't bear to rewind. I didn't want the highlights reel. I didn't want the instant replay where trust looked like a door we both walked through, and then I realized it had no handle on my side. No answer. The apartment looked like him, even without him. Warm light from the kitchen under-cabinet glow. A ridiculous magnet collection on the fridge from all the places he swore he didn't vacation in. Conferences, he'd say with a straight face, as if conferences involved beach sunsets and wooden piers. The beige couch everyone makes fun of, until they sit on it and never leave. Plants that were somehow thriving. A cardigan draped over the back of a chair like he'd just shrugged out of it to make tea. Last night he'd made me tea. That's what I kept circling. It had been that simple, that gentle. Just to help, he'd said, setting a mug in my hands like it was a small animal. No funny business. I'd laughed. Because humor floats when everything else sinks. I'm not very funny during this, I'd told him. At best I'm aggressively competent. Good, he'd said. I'm aggressively supportive. He'd smiled a careful smile. The one he uses when he's making room in a conversation for you to breathe. We have a plan. We stick to it. The plan. One cycle. A safe place. Grounding techniques. Timers. Hydration. Distance if we needed distance. He had clipped those words to the space between us like laundry. Ordinary. Sun warmed, reassuring. We both knew why I'd asked him, why he'd said yes. He was my friend. He had always been the fixed point in rooms that moved too fast. If anyone could stand close without stepping over me, it was Riley. Except the word always is dangerous. It makes liars out of circumstances. Heat rarely respects a syllabus. The rise came sooner and harder than usual, a crest that didn't ask if we were ready. I remember a wall that steadied my back, the cool of it a prayer. His palms. A little too warm, steady and careful and not careful, his voice sang my name in a way that sounded like he was trying to give it back to me. Lucas. Look at me. His eyes were level. Brown, but bright like amber. I had loved that about him in a way I refused to name. How he could go flat, quiet, dependable, and then flare with a kindness that was almost light. I'd nodded, breath sawing, the rules stacking like dominoes in my head. One by one, they tipped. There was a point where logic left the room, and instinct ran all the red lights. Anyone who's lived in a body with its own sirens knows the sound. It's not romance. It's not even want. It's the animal's loud vote, and often it's wrong for the human. I remembered the sound I made, small and surprised, as something sharp pressed to the soft place below my ear, where pulse lives like a secret. I remember the singularity of it, the world narrowing to teeth, and the warning scandal of heat. I remember saying his name like I had dropped it and was trying to catch it before it shattered. And then the lights in my head went down, and the rest of it is blur and blank, and a tide pulling hard against a door. When I finally sat up, the knit throw peeled away from my neck with a tacky whisper. I looked. The skin there was swollen, the edges clean, the bruise a galaxy that would darken by noon. A mark, not a nick, not an almost, a claim my friend had no right to make. The emptiness in the pillow wasn't the whole of it. He wasn't here. The cardigan still on the chair, the mug in the sink with a ring of tea like an eclipse, his keys missing from the hook by the door. I stood too fast, and the room tilted. My body hummed like live wire, too awake in the wrong places, too empty in others. That's the thing I won't let anyone romanticize. A mark without consent doesn't feel like a vow. It feels like a trapdoor you didn't know you were standing on. In the bathroom mirror, the apartment's warm light gentled the edges of me, but it didn't lie. The bite was precise. It would have been easy to pretend it wasn't his if my whole skin didn't insist. "You promised," I told the mirror, because there was no one else to tell. It sounded childish, but being abandoned does that to a voice. It takes all your adult syllables and replaces them with the ones you used when you had skinned knees. My phone sat where I dropped it on the kitchen counter. No messages. None sent. The last thing I'd typed the night before, "We stick to the plan, right?" still hung in the unsent drafts like a ghost who refused to move on. I typed, "Where are you?" and erased it. I typed, "Riley," erased. I typed, "You marked me," stared until the letters blurred and became meaningless alphabet soup that couldn't feed me. I set the phone down and poured water into the same mug he'd used for tea, because I was not going to be dramatic enough to avoid it. The water tasted like copper and regret. I drank anyway. On the side table, the small blue timer he'd set, 10 minute intervals to check in with myself blinked zeros. I pressed it just to hear something that obeyed me. The beep was too bright for the morning, and I flinched. "Okay," I told the room, because talking out loud turns thoughts into plans. "Okay. Shower. Clothes. Get out of here." Leaving felt both necessary and petty, like cleaning up after a hurricane by sweeping the porch. But I needed my space back, the one that didn't smell like him, the one where I could stand at my own window and decide if today was for crying or for breaking plates. I moved through the small domestic ritual of pretending I was fine. The shower, notch too hot, the soap in careful circles, the avoidance of the mirror. I dressed in denim that made a promise to hold me together, and a soft hoodie that could pass as armor if you squinted. I laced my shoes with careful fingers. By the door, I hesitated. I wanted to leave a note, something clipped and dignified like in a movie, "We are done here." But what we are, didn't fit into a line. It was a map with coffee stains and sections torn out, and now there was a new route someone had drawn on my skin without asking. I settled for aligning his shoes by the mat. They were crooked. It felt petty and intimate and wrong that I still knew how he liked the toes to point. My hand was on the doorknob when the guilt arrived, uninvited and galling. Not for anything I'd done. For the part of me that still wanted him to come back through the door and say he was sorry and mean it. For the part of me that wanted to hand him that chance. I hated that part. I also knew better than to hate pieces of myself for wanting. Wanting isn't a crime. Doing is. The hallway outside was cool and smelled like other people's breakfasts. I stepped out and closed the door with a soft click that felt much too polite for what it kept behind it. In the elevator, my phone buzzed. A message from a number not saved but familiar in my bones. "I'm sorry." 2 words. Not enough. Too much. I didn't reply. I didn't throw the phone either. I watched my reflection jitter in the elevator's brushed metal and noted, clinically, that my eyes looked like I'd slept with grief under them. The hoodie's collar hid the worst of the swelling at my neck. I tucked my hands into the pocket to hide their shake. Trust had been the start last night. Panic had been the middle. Now came pain, sharp and clean. Anger would follow. I could feel it assembling itself in my ribs, a scaffold, a necessary architecture. "Fine," I told the elevator, as if it were a witness. "Build." The doors slid open to the lobby's too bright morning. Outside, the city did what it always does, moved on. I stepped into it, one foot, and then the next, the mark at my throat pulsing like a metronome I refused to dance to. Behind me, somewhere above, his apartment held our dented night. Tea ring, cardigan, timer. The scent of him threaded through everything like a problem I hadn't solved. I walked faster. Weeks don't heal the kind of wound that thinks it's a tether. They stretch, yes, thin and see-through, until nights start leaking through the days. I learned the rhythm of it. Mornings felt manageable if I moved fast, if I outran mirrors and the soft gravity of my bed. Evenings were trickier. The mark under my hoodie would wake up when the sun went down, a small mean star pulsing under skin. Sometimes it burned like a bad idea. Sometimes it ached like an abandoned porch step that remembers footsteps. Sleep had rules now. Don't wear the shirt that smells like him. Don't check your phone for apologies you don't want. Don't imagine keys in the lock and a voice saying your name like a rescue line. I followed the rules until I didn't. On those nights, I dreamed of cedar and rain on pavement, and hands that were careful until they weren't. I would wake with my heart running sprints, and the taste of copper apology in my mouth. The "I'm sorry" text from the elevator lived in my notifications for exactly 24 hours. Then I blocked the number. Then I unblocked it to see if new apologies appeared while the block was on. That's not how technology works, but grief thinks it's above UX. Then I blocked it again. Perfection, balance, closure. None achieved. Avery showed up on a Thursday like a storm system. Alpha energy first, knock second. I opened the door and she walked in, already swearing under her breath. My sister is the kind of beautiful people call intimidating, because they don't want to admit they're excited to be scared. She held a paper bag of groceries like a weapon. "Sit," she ordered the air. I sat because the air and I have history. She took inventory with her eyes, the hoodie, the shadows, the tea tower on the counter like a shrine to bad coping. "So this is where you live now," she said, setting eggs in a fortress of protein bars on the island. "In a fort made of chamomile." "It's not chamomile," I said, which was true for exactly one box. "Mostly." Avery's gaze flicked to my collar. I tugged the hoodie higher even though she's seen me in worse states, post-wisdom teeth, post-breakup, post every time I tried to grow basil and killed it within a week. She exhaled, a prelude to violence. "Give me his address." "No, Lucas, no. Avery." "I'm not going to kill him," she said, voice deceptively soft. "I'm going to find him, and remove everything he's ever been attached to." Metaphorically, beat, and possibly not. I laughed, because humor has a good bedside manner. You can't threaten to metaphorically castrate someone. Watch me. She started frying eggs like they had wronged her. "You tell me if the pain spikes, I'll drive you to urgent care, or his doorstep. Dealer's choice." "I'm okay." "You're functional," she corrected. "That's different." She put a plate in front of me, and stood with crossed arms until I ate. There are advantages to being raised by a woman whose default setting is commander. I ate. It tasted like protection and too much salt. Avery leaned on the counter. "He'll come crawling back. They always do when they realize what they've done, and miss the thing they broke." I stabbed a yolk. "If he crawls, he better bring a hazmat suit." Her mouth twitched. "Attaboy." When she left, she hugged me with a force that said I could borrow her spine if mine was tired. After the door clicked shut, the apartment expanded, the way rooms do when they're only holding one heart. The silence was heavy, but honest. I washed the pan because small victories count. The ache didn't believe in eggs. It circled back around midnight, sly and insistent, a hand around the base of my skull, a tug behind the mark like I was answering a call from a number I didn't want to recognize. I breathed through it. 4 counts in, hold for 4, out for 6. Box breathing, triangle breathing, alphabet breathing, where you exhale the names of letters until it's funny. It helped enough that I slept. Theo picked the cafe with the kind baristas and plants that were absolutely dying but pretending on Instagram. He waved when he saw me, all soft edges and kind eyes, the sort of omega who reminds you that softness is not a synonym for weakness, it's just a different kind of steel. "Hey stranger," he said, sliding a small cloth pouch across the table like we were in a spy movie with better lighting. "Smell kit, lavender, skullcap, passionflower, not a cure, just something to hold instead of the ache." "Is skullcap a hat for your skull?" I asked. Or do I need to knit one to make it work? It's a plant, he said, delighted that I had set him up for this, and you can absolutely knit a hat if it helps. Placebo is still in effect. Theo ordered us oat milk lattes because he's determined to mother me without ever being condescending. He also has a PhD in breathing techniques courtesy of the internet, and 3 rough seasons of his own. He drew squares on the condensation ring. Box breathing when it spikes. Hot shower if you need reset. Weighted blanket. Podcasts where the host whispers at furniture. I'm not desperate enough for whisper furniture podcasts, I lied. He cocked his head. I hear a man who fell asleep to a 2-hour video of someone describing screws. They were very informative screws. We sipped. The cafe noise wrapped around our table. Cutlery clink, milk steamer sigh. People performing the soft theater of being fine. Theo watched me not watching my phone. You don't have to out stubborn biology, he said. You can out ritual it. Routine is a leash you put on the wolf, not a muzzle. I thought I was the wolf, I said. You are. But right now the wolf wants what the man doesn't. And I'm on team man. His kindness cracked something behind my ribs in a way that wasn't entirely painful. What if I never stop wanting? You will, he said. Wanting changes shape if you keep feeding it other things. Sleep, friends, work, stupid jokes, long walks where you judge dogs' outfits. Those sweater capes are a choice, I admitted. He grinned, then sobered. It's okay to miss him and still not want him near you. Brains and bodies can file opposite motions. I traced the rim of my mug. The chamomile tower Avery mocked rose in my head like a leaning monument. For the record, I said, the next person who offers me chamomile tea is getting it in the face. Theo choked on his latte. Noted. We will weaponize only in emergencies. He nudged the pouch. Use this at night. The lavender won't fill the Riley-shaped space, but it might blur the edges. And the skullcap is not a hat, but I'll still knit you one. Don't, I said. If you knit me comfort, I'll owe you a friendship bracelet, and I have standards. Rude, he said, pleased. We talked about nothing for a while, the way people do when something is too big to stand in the middle of all at once. The ache did its slow orbit, but farther out. I could breathe inside it. When we stood to leave, Theo pulled me into a hug that smelled like coffee and dryer sheets. Call me if it spikes. I'll read you Wikipedia entries until you beg for mercy. Please start with screws, I said. Pervert, he said cheerfully, and left me laughing on the sidewalk. Back home, the apartment felt less like an enemy. I opened windows, let the city in, horns and distant sirens, and someone arguing lovingly with a dog named Pancake. I put the smell pouch by the bed, and texted Avery a picture of actual dinner to prove I was not eating cereal out of a mixing bowl. Pain is honest. It tells you exactly where it hurts. Anger arrived in pockets, at the sink, in the shower, whenever my hoodie brushed the mark and my stomach dropped like an elevator. I let it. Humor showed up after. Not as a cure, but as a jacket you can put on when the weather doesn't care. I didn't make chamomile. I slept with the window cracked and the weighted blanket pretending to be a mountain. When the ache woke me around 3, it was softer. Not gone. Not forgiven. Just something I could hold without dropping myself. 6 months is a lot of time until it isn't. Grief learned my apartment the way a cat learns sunspots, curling on the same patches of floor at the same hours. I learned it back. I learned the smell kit Theo made me, the one that lived in my bedside drawer like a quiet friend. I learned that if I opened the window a crack at night, the city would sing me into a version of sleep that didn't feel like drowning. I learned my scar in the morning, how the light laid a thin coin of shadow along it, stern and uninterested, and how my hoodie hid the parts I didn't want to narrate. The bond dulled, then flared, then dulled again. It did not forget. It grew into a weather system I could read well enough to carry an umbrella. On a Saturday that tasted like burnt toast and victory, Avery came over to bully me into brunch. She was reading headlines on her phone and threatening to accidentally email my landlord about the building's sad excuse for heating when someone knocked. 3 short knocks, like the person had practiced sounding casual. Avery's eyes slid to mine. Expecting anyone? No, I said. And meant it in too many ways. She opened the door with her chin already up, which is her version of hello. And there he was. Riley looked like a paper someone had folded and unfolded too many times. The edges were still him. Broad shoulders, a mouth that defaulted toward kind. But the creases told a story about nights that didn't end in mornings. He held a grocery store bouquet like he wasn't sure how to hold his hands without it. The smell of rain hit first, clean and wrong and mine in ways I hated. The bond reacted before I could. It didn't sing. It flinched, then reached, a muscle memory I hadn't signed up for. I steadied myself on the counter because my body, traitorous diplomat, thought proximity was progress. Avery stepped into the doorway, like a door had grown teeth. No. Riley's gaze flicked to the mark the hoodie didn't quite cover and back to my face with a wince so fast you could miss it. "Hi," he said, voice rough. "Lucas." "What do you want?" Avery asked, low and pleasant in the way that precedes blood sport. "To talk," he said. "To apologize. To not make this worse." "Bold of you to assume that's an option," she said. "Avery," I said, and she tilted her head like fine. "But say the magic word." I didn't know the word. I knew I didn't want a scene on my doormat, and I knew I didn't want him inside my home like nothing had happened. The hallway smelled like other people's waffles. The world had the audacity to be normal. 5 minutes, I said. "Downstairs." Avery's mouth flattened. "I will be exactly 6 feet behind you, and if he breathes wrong, I will rearrange his future." We took it to the stoop. The sun stood politely behind a bank of clouds. Riley hovered with the awkwardness of a man who used to know what to do with his hands, and didn't trust them now. "You just disappeared," I said, the words emerging as if they had been. "Waiting in a queue for months, and now you show up with flowers?" He looked at the bouquet like it had betrayed him. "They're not lilies?" "I read that lilies are funerals," Avery supplied helpfully. "Right," he said, then set the bouquet on the step in a move that felt like he was surrendering. A silence opened, and he didn't try to stuff it with words. He swallowed. "Adam's apple, a nervous metronome." "I panicked," he said quietly, "that night, after. I looked at what I'd done, and I broke. I didn't trust myself not to do more harm if I stayed, so I left, which was more harm." He laughed once, without humor. "I am aware of the logic fail." The anger I had curated like a houseplant perked right up. "You are not a summer internship, Riley. You didn't get to ghost and then reapply." "I know," he said. "I started therapy the Monday after. I've been in it. I'm still in it." I almost asked for receipts because rage loves bureaucracy. Instead, congratulations on discovering therapists. "Would you like a medal, or just the check?" "Neither," he said. "I'd like to make amends in the ways you allow. And if that's never, then I will not argue." Avery's gaze pinged between us, assessing risk and exit routes. "I don't care about your therapy," she told him. "I care about whether my brother can sleep." Riley flinched. "I care about that too." "Prove it without breathing near him," she said. He nodded. "Can we?" He glanced at me. "Not here? There's a cafe 2 blocks down. Public. Neutral." Avery looked to me. The bond tugged. My spine said stand up straight. "Fine," I said. "Public, neutral. And if you brought a serenade, I'm leaving." "I did not," he said. "I would never." We walked the 2 blocks in a formation that would have confused a flock of geese. Avery pace setting like a security detail, me in the middle. Riley half a step back like he was learning the choreography as we went. The cafe's bell did a small, polite ding. We picked the table by the window where the plants pretended not to be dying. Riley sat with his hands open on the table, as if to say, "See, nothing in them." "I didn't come alone," he said. "Not to corner you, to be accountable." "Is this where you tell me your mother is hiding under the banquette?" I asked. He shook his head toward the door. A man in his 40s walked in, moving with a contained ease that didn't pretend to be casual. He had the kind of face you don't immediately describe, because doing so would feel like commentary on a statue. Calm, the kind that holds. "Lucas," Riley said, "this is Dr. Hale." "Not your doctor," Dr. Hale added at once, and sat when I didn't tell him to leave. I'm Riley's therapist. I told him I wouldn't speak to you unless you agreed, and if you don't, I'll finish my coffee at a respectful distance. You brought your therapist to my apology, I said. I brought my witness to my promises, Riley said. Dr. Hale folded his hands. His eyes did that steady thing therapists' eyes do, but there was a bend in it, something like weathered. I'm here for 2 reasons. 1, to make sure Riley doesn't treat this conversation like a fix-it speed run. 2, to name aloud that marks and bonds aren't theory to me. I was an alpha. I lost my omega. The word hung in the steam from the espresso machine. Lost, not left, not broke up with. The past tense sat clean and non-negotiable. I'm sorry, I said before I could stop myself. Thank you, he said simply. I tell you that not for pity, but to say I respect what was taken from you. I have made it a practice to help alphas understand that remorse without repair is performance. Riley knows that if you say no to any involvement from him, no means no. He also knows that if you say yes to anything, it will be scaffolded by your boundaries, not his guilt. I leaned back. Boundaries. Everyone's favorite new accessory. Mine too, he said, with a ghost of a smile. You owe me nothing. You owe him nothing. If you want, I can leave now. And the only job I'll keep is making sure Riley doesn't turn your pain into his project. I looked at Riley. He didn't look back with those pleading eyes people wear when they want the court to be merciful. He kept his gaze low, steady on the tabletop grain like he'd made a deal with himself about where he was allowed to look. The lines at his mouth made him look older, in a way that had nothing to do with years. What are you actually apologizing for? I asked. He didn't rush. For marking you without your consent. For leaving and compounding the harm. For making my fear your problem. For turning a friendship you trusted into a room you had to escape for any night you couldn't sleep because of me. For every morning you had to pretend you were fine. The bouquet sat on the chair beside him like a student in time out. I watched a petal give up and fall. It was petty of me to be pleased. And what, I said, do you think happens now? In your head? In my head, he said. I ask what you'll allow, and I accept the answer. If that answer is delete my number and learn to live with the ache you built for us both, I will do that. If that answer is show up every Tuesday with groceries and leave them at the door without speaking, I will do that. If that answer is try again at being my friend, I will learn the rules you set and follow them. There is no version where I ask you to fix me so I can feel better about myself. My anger, stubborn and loyal, checked its watch. My hurt yawned. Something else, small and suspicious, sat up. I turned to Dr. Hale. And you trust him with that? I trust what people do more than what they say, he said. I've watched him sit with the part of himself that wants a shortcut and choose the long way. That doesn't make him safe for you. Your body decides what is safe. If your body says no, that is wisdom, not cowardice. Outside, a dog in a sweater cape walked by, and looked personally offended by gravity. I didn't smile. Not externally. Okay, I said finally. Here's what I can do. I counted on my fingers because lists are spells. No touching. No showing up at my door without texting first. If I say leave, you leave. You do not talk to my sister without my permission because she is a weapon and does not need ammo. You do not apologize more than once per interaction. Interest rates on sorries are predatory. Riley nodded like he'd been waiting for homework. Yes, and, I added, shocking myself. You can walk me home so Avery doesn't have to choose between escorting me and following you to categorize your crimes. Avery, who I had almost forgotten was pretending to read a menu 3 tables away, looked up, eyebrows like startled birds. She didn't interfere. She did text me weapon? Accurate. I did not smile. Not externally. We paid separately because symbolism matters. On the sidewalk, the air held that bright, cold taste of almost rain. Riley kept a full step to my right like he was giving my body in the bond space to file separate reports. I didn't forgive him. I didn't take the flowers. But I didn't run. Which, for a Saturday that started with burnt toast, felt like a different kind of weather. Coexistence is not forgiveness. It's a calendar. After the cafe, we wrote rules like a treaty. He would text before showing up. No touching. One apology per interaction. If I said leave, he left. Avery added a subclause about her right to defensive redecorating of his face, which Dr. Hale diplomatically referred to as colorful accountability. Riley started small. Tuesdays, a grocery bag appeared after a ping on the stoop. No lilies. I'd wait a beat suspension as power, then open the door to find the bag and him, a polite step back, hands visible. Gaze somewhere near the architectural decisions of my building. Your apology quota is 1, I'd say. Noted, he'd say, and swallow whatever else wanted out. The bond reacted like weather static when he was near. A pressure change behind the ears. Sometimes it made me lightheaded, sometimes it made my humor meaner, which Avery appreciated like sport. When she swung by and caught him retreating down the hall with his empty hands and dated sneakers, she said, "Thanks for the delivery," door broke, and shut the door with a smile that had too many teeth. "Be nice," I told her, unbagging produce. "I'm being legal," she said. "Nice is for people who return library books." "He brought eggs," I said. "You don't get absolution for omelets," she said, but she cracked 2 anyway and cooked them like they had personally disappointed her. The kitchen faucet chose this moment in history to become a metronome. Drip, 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 each drop a tiny audition for insanity. The building manager shrugged the shrug of old plumbing. I was still staring at a YouTube tutorial called Fix Your Leaky Faucet, No Skills Required, when Riley texted, "I'm nearby with a toolbox. Consent to approach?" I considered telling him to go fix something he owned. Instead, I typed, "You can look. No guarantees." He arrived with the toolbox held like a ceremonial object. He hovered at the threshold until I pointed to the sink. Avery planted herself on a stool like a parole officer. Riley set to work with a focus that made the air feel steadier. He didn't narrate, which I appreciated. He did ask, "May I turn off the water?" As if I might say no and he would respect it. I nodded. He turned the little valves and loosened the handle with a care I recognized from other nights I wouldn't think about. "One apology," I reminded. He glanced up. "I am sorry. For the harm, for the mess I made of your trust." He looked back at the faucet before his face could do something stupid like hope. "Good," Avery said crisply. "Proceed." The fix took 20 minutes and 3 YouTube tabs. He tightened the packing nut, replaced a little haggard washer, wiped the counter, and stepped back like from an altar. He turned the water on. The drip stopped. "Don't milk the moment," Avery warned. "I wasn't," he said, and looked to me. "Thank you," I said, and watched him pocket the words without unwrapping them. He left at my nod. After the door clicked, Avery leaned over the sink and listened to the silence where the drip had been. "Fine," she said to the absence. "He can have partial credit for plumbing. That's it." In the park on Thursday, the city did its practiced impression of serenity, dogs with complicated outfits, joggers pretending not to be competitive, the pond pretending not to be a puddle with ambition. Riley kept a step to my right like choreography. "Dr. Hale says I should ask before offering solutions," he said, hands in his pockets. "So I am asking if you want solutions to the thing you texted about last night, or just listening." "I don't want your hack," I said. "I want your ears." "Granted," he said, and shut up with respect that felt like a gift instead of an absence. I told him about the ache that wakes me around 3, and sits on the edge of the bed like a person who will not leave the party. I told him about the anger arriving in pockets, about the Museum of Chamomile in my cabinet, about Theo's smell kit and Wikipedia lullabies. He looked at the path, not my throat, and kept pace. "Thank you," he said, when I ran out of words, "for telling me what your nights are like. I hate that I'm part of that." "You are," I said. "You don't get to hate it as a way to feel better about it." He nodded. "Understood." A small dog in a sweater cape trotted by, his owner narrating his every step like an audiobook. The dog, Pancake, fate informs us, shot me a look of solidarity with the oppressed. It made me laugh inside my ribs. Out loud I said, "For the record, if you ever buy me a sweater cape as an apology, I will set it on fire." "I will never," he said solemnly. I would sooner apologize with lilies. Careful, I said. That's a threat. He breathed something like a smile and then didn't pursue it, which was unexpectedly kind. Theo and I met at the store on purpose because routine is the leash you put on the wolf. We debated the legitimacy of frozen waffles while Riley checked expiration dates on yogurt 2 aisles away, pretending that was a normal hobby. Theo side-eyed him, and then me. "You need a cart for boundaries?" he murmured. "I have a treaty," I said. "And a faucet that behaves. Look at you, getting domestic reparations." Riley drifted closer with tactical slowness. "Do you want me to carry the heavy things?" he asked. "Or would that feel like a sneak attack on your independence?" "Ask, don't assume," Theo whispered approvingly. "You can carry the giant water pack," I said. "As long as you agree that this is not a metaphor." "No metaphors," Riley said, hoisting the thing like a penitent pilgrim. "Just water." At checkout, he stood behind me, not too close, and put his basket on the conveyor only after mine was safely divided by the plastic divider that suddenly felt like a boundary to be respected. The cashier flirted with Theo because Theo has a face that invites the better parts of people. Outside, bags in hand, Riley did a small half bow I teased him about under my breath. "You don't get forgiveness for a couple of grocery bags," I said. "I know," he said. "I'm not shopping for absolution." "Good," I said. And didn't stop him when he fell into step. He messed up once that week. Outside my building he said, "I'm sorry," then said it again when I didn't respond fast enough. I held up 2 fingers. "Quota violated." He winced. "Right. 1. He breathed, recalibrated. "Thank you for the walk." I considered making him do a lap around the block as penance. Instead I said, "Text before Tuesday if you're thinking of showing up. I'm rearranging my week." "Consent to text requested," he said. "Granted," I said. And both our phones buzzed like the universe thought it was cute. He texted that evening, an ask in noun form. "Recipe? The soup from last winter. If you want it. I can drop it, I won't linger." I stared at the screen too long for a soup. The bond did its weather trick inside my bones. Pressure and release. I typed, "Fine. Tomato lentil. No cilantro. Cilantro tastes like punishment." "Copy that," he sent. "No punishment soup." I laughed, out loud this time, and hated that the laughter didn't ask my permission before it arrived. On Friday Dr. Hale emailed me, only because I had given consent at the cafe for logistical communications. It was 3 lines long. "You owe me nothing. If any interaction feels like a slide instead of a step, step back. No mystery here. Bodies know." The lack of performance in his tone made me like him more than I meant to. That weekend, the city pretended at spring, even though calendar said otherwise. I cracked the window and let the almost warm in. Riley's soup came in a container labeled with the ingredients, the date, and a note, "If this tastes like cilantro, I will accept public shaming." I didn't invite him in. I did text, "It doesn't. You're safe." He replied with a thumbs up and nothing else, which was new and excellent. The ache still called at 3 a.m., but softer, like a friend who had learned time zones. Humor still showed up with its lopsided grin. Anger still kept me from doing reckless things like forgiving for free. And yet, in the park on Sunday, we sat at opposite ends of a bench while Pancake persecuted squirrels. The sun got confused and came out for 10 minutes. Riley told me a story about his nephew discovering pockets. He kept putting his hands in them and then clapping for himself because object permanence is a party. And I laughed without scolding the laugh for treason. It wasn't trust. Not yet. It was a toe on the first stone across a river I wasn't sure I wanted to cross. The water looked cold. The stones looked slick. But I was standing. And he was not reaching. And between us, the treaty held. Dr. Hale's office looked like the blueprint for calm. Not the smug kind. More like a room that had made friends with its own silence. Books that had been read. A ficus that had the audacity to thrive. A clock that ticked softly enough you had to choose to hear it. Peppermint in the air. Or maybe that was a trick the room played to make your breath behave. I took the far end of the couch. Riley sat in the chair angled toward, not at, me. One seat between us like a moat. Dr. Hale closed the door, placed a glass of water on the table, then sat with that quiet that doesn't demand. His eyes rested, not pressed. "Thank you both for consenting to this joint session," he said. "Ground rules are simple. Lucas, you set the distance. Riley, one apology per meeting. Both of you. No autopsies of motives disguised as questions. Speak in I statements. We are here to make present tense choices, not to stage a trial we can't win." Riley nodded first. "Yes." He glanced at me without letting it stick. I gave a small nod that counted as fine. "Proceed." Dr. Hale looked at Riley. "When you're ready." Riley exhaled through his nose, like a swimmer before the long part. "I marked you without your consent." His voice didn't wobble, which felt worse than if it had. That's the harm. I could say everything that led to it. The panic. The way instinct felt like an alarm that erased the room. But none of that erases the fact that I did it. After I saw your face and thought... He stopped, recalibrated. "I thought I'd ruined you. Not in some arrogant, I'm the center of your life way. In the small way. The way that turns sleep into a negotiation and kitchens into minefields." He had not used his apology yet. The room held its breath. "I left because I was afraid I would make it worse by staying," he said, "and leaving made it worse. I spent the first week sleeping on the floor because the bed felt like evidence. I showered twice a day because my own scent made me nauseous. I changed my routes so I wouldn't pass your street. I started therapy because I was breaking in ways I didn't trust myself to name. Dr. Hale told me to stop narrating my remorse at people and start repairing in verbs. I wrote a list. It starts with, ask before offering, leave when told, no touch, listen like. The point is to hear, not to be forgiven. Take the long way, every time. That was a lot of nouns pretending to be verbs, but I could see the edges of effort. He looked older than the first day on my stoop. Not tired, worn in. Dr. Hale's attention shifted to me like a light moving but not glaring. "Lucas?" I had rehearsed versions in the shower where steam let me be braver than air. None of them survived contact with the couch. "I hate that my body wants a person my brain knows better than," I said. "I hate that a mark can feel like hunger when it should feel like a warning label. I hate 3 a.m. because it knows my name." I nudged the glass of water an inch, a way to prove my hands could move. "The first month, I counted ceiling cracks to dodge your name. The second, I made a museum of chamomile and walked around it like an exhibit on bad choices. I missed you in a way. That made me angry at me. I made you my safe person and you left, and I hate that part of me is in this room, hoping you have a sentence that fixes everything. I know you don't." Riley didn't move. The chair was earning its degree. Dr. Hale nodded, not as approval, just as witness. "Thank you," he said to both of us, like gratitude could be placed between us the way you put a wedge under a door to keep it from slamming. Here's a sentence I offer, not as absolution, but as framing. The night of the mark was not consensual. A bond amplified what followed. Fear and biology stacked the deck against both of you. That makes you both victims of circumstance. From here forward, it's not circumstance, it's choice. Yours." He steepled his fingers. "Choice has weight, it also has relief." He gave us both papers, not homework, more like maps. Columns with headers, what safety feels like in my body. What repair looks like in actions, not promises. What too much looks like. How to leave a conversation kindly, but firmly. He gave us pencils, not pens, which felt like permission to be wrong and revise. Riley wrote first. He turned the page so I couldn't see, which was also a kindness. I stared until the words arrived. Safety feels like I can nap without checking the door twice. Safety feels like being believed the first time I say no. Repair looks like texts that ask, not presume. Repair looks like you leaving groceries without a speech. Too much looks like you crying on my doorstep so I comfort you. Leaving kindly looks like, I'm saturated. I need to go. We can pick this up in 2 days. I slid the paper back toward Dr. Hale like it might leak. He read quickly. "Good," he said, and didn't annotate. "Riley?" Riley's voice stayed steady. Safety for Lucas looks like me not being a surprise. Repair looks like me showing up to the plans we make and leaving to the ones we don't. Too much looks like me explaining myself at him. Leaving kindly is me saying, thank you for the time. I'm going to step out so your nervous system doesn't have to run defense on me. You used your apology yet? Doctor, Hale asked him gently. Riley looked at me. I'm sorry, he said. Nothing else. No modifiers. It landed like a small rock where the big ones already were. We spent the last 10 minutes logisticsing like adults who have learned to calendar their feelings. 1 session a month together if I wanted it. Otherwise separate tracks. Riley would text only on Tuesdays and Fridays unless there was a practical question. I could change those rules without ceremony. Dr. Hale walked us to the door. A soft boundary. Your pain is valid, he said to me. Your remorse is not a passport, he said to Riley. Then to both, pick the long way. It's slower. It's also the one you can walk without looking over your shoulder. Outside, the city had leaned into gray, the kind that makes even signs look thoughtful. We stood 3 polite feet apart, because apparently that was our religion now. Thank you for coming, Riley said, then flattened his mouth, catching his quota before it escaped again. Thank you for not turning it into theater, I said. I dislike plays where I'm the prop. A bus hissed by. Somewhere, a dog yodeled at a cloud. We started walking aimlessly because aimless felt less like a commitment and more like weather. I used to think bonds were romantic, I said, watching my breath ghost. Like a ribbon. Turns out ribbons can choke. I know, he said. I grew up around alphas who wore bonds like trophies. I told myself I wasn't that. Telling yourself isn't a plan. That sounds suspiciously like a second apology. It isn't, he said. It's context I am not asking you to solve. We passed the cafe with the dying plants and the warm light that flatters everyone. Inside, the barista I liked was steaming milk like it owed her rent. I paused. Riley didn't. You can come in, I said, surprising the part of me that had prepared to say no by muscle memory. I'll sit by the window, you, opposite chair, treaty distance. He nodded like I'd handed him a fragile object. Inside, the air tasted like sugar and cinnamon, and the end of something sharp. We ordered separately on purpose. I took the seat that let me watch the door. He took the one that let me watch the street. 2 anchors. Do you remember, he said, settling. That night you said you were aggressively competent during heat. His eyes flicked to the table when mine shot a warning. I am not making a joke. I remember, I said, and sipped. The latte was exactly the right temperature, the kind of detail that makes you think the day has hands. I kept thinking, he said, how you trusted me with that sentence. I want to be aggressively trustworthy. Adjectives don't repair verbs, I said, but my mouth softened around it. Keep showing up like a calendar. We'll see if the days make a pattern. The cafe light folded around our table like a blanket that had learned my shape. Conversations rose and fell around us. Ordinary, merciful. We didn't solve anything. We didn't write vows in foam. We did sit for 40 minutes without me checking the door more than once. Progress is sometimes just the absence of retreat. When we stood, he moved his chair back slowly, like sound could bruise. Outside, the sky was trying on blue at the edges. I don't hate you, I said, and the sentence surprised both of us by being true. Not forgiveness, not even kindness, just the absence of that particular fire. Riley's breath fogged in a small, disbelieving cloud. Thank you for telling me. Don't spend it, I said. It's not currency. It's weather. He nodded, hands in pockets, a man practicing patience like a language. We turned toward different corners, the streetlights switching from red to green like an officiant at a ceremony neither of us was ready for. The ache would be back at 3 a.m. Maybe softer. Maybe the same old guest on the edge of the bed. But tonight, the space beside me would not feel like a crime scene. It would feel like a room I could sleep in. Small, I told myself as I walked. Small is not nothing. Sometimes it's how hope enters a story without scaring it away. By February, my apartment smelled like lentil soup, fresh laundry, and something else I didn't name. Riley had started dropping off meals with labels like no cilantro. Promise. Sometimes he stayed just long enough to fix the thing I'd been ignoring: light bulbs, the squeaky cabinet hinge, the spreadsheet at work that made my eyes cross. Then he'd leave without fanfare, like someone who'd learned the art of quiet verbs. One night I sat hunched over my laptop, drowning in deadlines, when the doorbell buzzed. Riley held up 2 takeout containers like evidence. "You look like you forgot dinner exists," he said, voice careful. "Permission to rescue your blood sugar?" I almost said no because pride is free and addictive. But my inbox was a battlefield, and the smell leaking from the containers had basil in it, not cilantro. "Fine," I said. "But this isn't forgiveness." "Understood," he said, setting the food on the table like he was feeding a wild animal. Temporary truce with vegetables. We ate in the glow of my overworked desk lamp. He didn't ask about my stress. He printed the graphs I needed, fixed the formatting, and left before the air could get heavy. When the door shut, the room stayed warmer than before. Avery came by Sunday afternoon, her usual storm in boots entrance muted for once. She scanned the neatly stacked containers in the fridge, the fixed faucet, the absence of chaos. "Maybe," she said slowly. "He's not a complete idiot." "High praise," I muttered, slicing bread. "Don't get smug," she warned. "I still have an emergency shovel in my trunk labeled Riley." "Subtle," I said. But she didn't slam the cabinets the way she used to when his name came up. She sat on the counter, sipping tea, watching me work like she was recalibrating a map she'd drawn with thicker lines. At the office, Riley once delivered coffee because I'd mentioned in passing that my project meeting started too early for survival. He left it with a note: "For the War Council. Victory optional." My coworkers raised eyebrows. I raised the cup in mock salute and pretended my ears weren't warm. When the meeting ran long and awful, he texted afterward, "You survived?" "Barely," I typed. "Standing offer to file complaints with appropriate snack bribes," he replied. I ignored the tiny smile this built in my ribs. Theo witnessed the whole slow shift with the glee of a man watching a soap opera he didn't pay for. At the cafe, he pointed his spoon like a prophet. "2 more weeks of soup deliveries," he said. "And we're engraving wedding invitations." I threw a pillow at him, hard enough that the barista glared. Theo dodged, grinning. "I'm just saying, the man fixed your faucet, your spreadsheet, and probably your circadian rhythm. That's husband energy." "It's penance energy," I corrected. He said in the tone of someone not taking notes because the story was obvious to him already. One rainy Thursday, the power blinked out mid-evening. I found candles and swore at the outage while my laptop battery gasped. Riley knocked softly before I could text anyone, holding a flashlight and 2 thermoses. "Blackout survival kit," he said. "You just had this ready?" "I have nieces," he said. "Kids think flashlights fix the dark itself." We sat on the floor because the couch felt too formal for candlelight and thunder. He handed me tea, not coffee, as if he knew caffeine would make the storm in my head louder. "Thanks," I said. He only nodded, the flashlight beam resting politely on the ceiling instead of my face. The quiet stretched, not heavy. Just my shoulders, traitorous things, loosened a fraction. When lightning cracked across the sky, I looked over on instinct. He wasn't watching me, just the candle flame between us, like even his eyes had learned boundaries. Something in my chest uncoiled, small but real. I smiled, unplanned, unarmed. His mouth twitched, barely there, like he didn't want to scare it off. Avery noticed the smile 2 days later when I told her about the blackout. "Careful," she said, smirking. That sounded dangerously close to fondness. "It was tea," I said. "And weather?" "Uh-huh," she said, like someone bookmarking a page for future reference. By the end of the month, Riley's texts had shifted from logistics, soup outside, no cilantro, to small things like "this park has terrible ducks. You'd like them." I didn't know what to call the space we'd built. Not friendship, not forgiveness. Something with scaffolding, not walls. The bond didn't ache as sharply at night. My laughter didn't ask permission before showing up when Theo made wedding jokes, or Avery threatened Riley with shovels. And when Riley left containers labeled "no punishment soup" on my counter, I didn't tell him to leave right away. I even said thank you once without qualifiers. It wasn't much, but it was more than before. And for the first time in months, more didn't feel like danger. It felt like maybe, cautiously, ridiculously, hope. It was a Wednesday when I realized the ache had gone quiet. Not gone. Just resting. Like a storm that had raged itself out over miles, and finally let the air be air again. I noticed it when Riley left a container labeled, "Absolutely Nobilium Cilantro," on the counter, and my chest didn't tighten the way it used to. I noticed it when I laughed at something stupid Theo texted. Instead of pretending the joke hadn't landed, I noticed it most when Riley turned to leave, slow and careful as always, and I said before thinking twice, "Stay a minute?" He paused like the sentence was in a language he hadn't heard in months. "Yeah," he said softly. We sat at the table, 2 mugs between us, candle on the windowsill fighting the evening light. I traced a circle on the wood with my finger. "I've been thinking," I said, then stopped because my throat was suddenly too small. "About?" I looked at him. Not the mark on my neck, not the ghost of what it meant. Him, the man who had shown up with soup and silence, who had learned to stand back when instinct told him to rush forward, who had taken every rule I handed him and followed it like gospel. "About doing this right," I said. His brow furrowed. "The bond," I clarified. "Not because of heat, not because of panic. Because I want to. Because I choose to." Riley went so still even the candle flame felt louder. "Lucas." "Don't talk yet," I said, before nerves could make me reckless. "You don't get to sell me on it. I'm saying, I don't want this thing between us to stay an accident forever." Slowly, carefully, like approaching a skittish animal, he nodded. "Okay." We walked to the park because walls felt too close for this. Evening draped itself over the trees, the sky bruised with sunset. The bond hummed under my skin, not sharp now, just present, like a low note waiting for music to catch up. Riley kept his hands visible, always the student of boundaries. "Tell me what you need," he said. "Slow," I said. "Like, slower than whatever you're thinking. And no speeches." His mouth tilted. "You're killing my dramatic monologue." "Tragic," I deadpanned. We stood under the same tree where, months ago, I'd walked off mid-sentence just to breathe without him watching. Now, I turned to face him. My heart did its best impression of a marching band. "Okay," I said. "Do it." He stepped closer, 1 pace at a time, like the ground had rules. His hands hovered near my shoulders but didn't touch. "Here?" he asked, voice low. "Here," I said. When his mouth met the place where panic had lived for half a year, it didn't feel like claim or apology. It felt like the period at the end of a sentence we had been writing too long. My body, traitorous and loyal, melted instead of bracing. The bond surged warm, then steadied, threading itself through the air between us. A quiet tether remade without the wreckage. He pulled back first, eyes searching mine like he needed the verdict before breathing. I smiled. "Small, sure. Now it's ours," I said. "Not the accident's. Ours." Something in his shoulders let go, like he'd been holding up the sky since that first night, and could finally set it down. Avery, of course, had opinions. "So you just let him?" she said later in my kitchen, arms crossed like a disappointed CEO. "Calm down," Theo said, pouring champagne into mismatched mugs because I didn't own real glasses. "It's romantic. Like re-downloading a cursed app but with better settings." "Terrible metaphor," Avery muttered. But she didn't slam anything, which was basically her version of a blessing. Dr. Hale had come because Theo insisted on a witness of sanity. He leaned against the counter, smiling the way people do when a plan unfolds without needing their rescue. "Consent changes the shape of memory," he said simply. "Today rewrites the night neither of you asked for." Theo raised his mug. "To rewriting then. And to Lucas not throwing this one out a window." I threw a napkin at him. He ducked, grinning. Later, after they left, Riley and I sat on the fire escape with a blanket and 2 mugs of tea, because champagne at my tolerance level was basically jet fuel. The city hummed below, lights blinking like lazy fireflies. He didn't reach for me. I didn't retreat. "Now what?" he asked quietly. "Now, I said, watching a train thread its way through the dark. I'm not your victim. I'm your partner. There's a difference. His breath came out shaky, like the word partner was heavier than the skyline. Yeah, he said. There is. The bond hummed again, softer this time. Not a chain. Not a shackle. Just a line between 2 points, steady enough to walk across without looking down. For the first time since the beginning, the air around us felt simple, not easy, just ours.